Hello, African sports fanatics. Welcome to another episode of the Safari Soccer Show. I'm your host, Yvonne Etta. Now, today is, I think, one of the greatest interviews that I've always looked forward to have in my, can I say, a lifetime? Yeah, maybe just introduce yourself, Matthew, and take us through your football journey since you started professional football at the age of 5. So just take us through your football journey. Maybe if you can just summarize. I know it's been a long career as well. So maybe just summarize from the age of 5 up to now.
Yeah, no, well, thanks very much for having me, Yvonne. It's a great pleasure to speak to a wider audience. Considering the circumstances, I hope everybody is safe and sound. But yeah, my name is Matthew Booth. I'm an ex-Bafana Bafana international footballer, ex-professional footballer. I retired about 6 or 7 years ago now, at the age of 37. And I grew up in Cape Town in South Africa. I played amateur football for a team called Fishhoek AFC from when I was 5 years old until 17. And the local South African clubs that I played for were Cape Town Spurs, Mamelodi Sundowns, on two occasions, Ajax Cape Town, and my last club was Bidvest Wits. And in between that, I spent 6 seasons in Russia, playing for FC Rostov for 2 years and Krylia Sovetov for 4 years. I played 28 times for my country, 35 times for our under-23s, and 25 times for our under-20s. So yeah, that sums me up.
Yeah. Also, you told me you played 6 years in Russia. But briefly, you have also played in England around 3 months. But I think most of your career you played in your home country. Now, how was the experience playing out of South Africa? Because a majority of your time you played in South Africa.
Yeah, so nowadays our league is financially quite wealthy. So a lot of our young, talented players stay in South Africa because they can earn very good money. They are big fish in a small pond. But I still feel that not enough of them are taking up the opportunity to go and play in Turkey or Belgium or Russia, perhaps for less money. But I still feel that they're going to be playing with better players. They're going to be coached by better coaches. And when you get out of your comfort zone, you end up becoming a better product. You learn a new language. You're in sometimes difficult situations, a difficult environment. You can be on the bench or injured and go back to a cold apartment. You're by yourself. There's no family or friends. And that definitely builds character. So I would encourage young players to take the opportunity and get out of their comfort zone, as I did. For me, I had plenty of opportunity to play in England and Spain, but I never quite made it. And so it came to a point where Russia came calling, and as we say, beggars can't be choosers, and decided to go to Russia. And it turned out to be a very good choice for me. I stayed there for six very successful seasons.
Yeah, talking about the time you were loaned to England, I think you hardly made it to the first 11, and I think the matches which you played were like a reserve team for the matches. So maybe what happened? Why couldn't you make it to the first 11 in your time at England?
Yeah, look, I went for a number of trials during my early career, and sometimes I would have a bad week. Sometimes I would have a good week, and my club in South Africa would ask for too much money. So it just never worked out. I spent 1 week at West Ham when Harry Redknapp was in charge, and they were selling Rio Ferdinand to Leeds. I had a very good week. They were very keen. They wanted me. I had a very good Olympics in 2000 in Sydney. And that was probably the closest I came to playing in the EPL. Unfortunately, Mamelodi Sundowns asked for a lot of money at the time. It was quite a ridiculous amount of money. So that deal never transpired. So about 6 months later, the owner of Wimbledon, and who was a South African, and the owner of my club arranged for me to go to Wimbledon. What they didn't do was they didn't tell the manager or the coach at the time that I was coming. So it's a lesson learned that, you know, when you do go on trial, make sure that the right people know that you are coming and actually want you there. Because when I arrived, the coach didn't know anything about me, and so I played 3 months in the reserve team. There was also a bit of a scandal going on at the club about the club moving from Wimbledon to Milton Keynes. So it wasn't a good time. You know, so they say timing is everything, and so it wasn't a good time for me. And after 3 months, I came back with my tail between my legs and continued to play for Mamelodi Sundowns.
Let's talk. You told me something that when you tried to go to the English side, your then club Mamelodi Sundowns had asked a lot of, I think, money. But I had hosted a guest sometime back on my show, and we were just talking about the selfishness and greediness in African football. Do you think this contributed to what you went through at that time? And how do you think it has changed within time? How has it changed?
Well, so I think the history of South African football, you know, back in the day, I'm not sure what the situation was like in Kenya, but in South Africa, it was only in 2001 where South African players could become free agents. Before then, even if our contracts ran out, the club still had a hold on the players. So from a rights and a labor point of view, the football industry here in South Africa has been stunted quite significantly. And so in 2001, when I went on trial to West Ham, I had only had a few B grade caps for Bafana Bafana. I had only played locally in South Africa, and I had a successful trial, and Mamelodi Sundowns asked for, at that stage, £1.5 million for me. Now, this was a ridiculous amount of money. And unfortunately, the deal didn't go through because of it. So there's a certain amount of greed and, you know, a bit of luck involved where you hope that the club owner will be reasonable. But there's very little that you can do when you're in contract. And at least now players can wait for their contracts to finish and then go as a free agent and use that as a bargaining tool.
But also, let's talk about your time at Bafana Bafana, because I know you have quite a number of appearances for the national team, which is a dream come true to most of the players to represent their country on such a national level. But also, you are fans' favorite. I think fans always chanted your name anytime you could have the ball. Did this come with a kind of a bit pressure while handling the ball in the field?
No, you know, no, athletes, sometimes the best athletes are the ones that don't have a very good imagination. You know, when we get onto the field, we are able to block out everything and anything, and we use the positivity from the crowd when we need it. But when there's a bit of negativity, we tend to block it out. So there was no added pressure for me. I quite enjoyed it. I had to explain to a lot of foreign journalists about why the crowd was booing me. So that was quite funny. But I understood why, you know, because of the history of South Africa, I understood why foreign journalists were fascinated by this. But I you know, when you look at Mark Fish, Lucas Khadebe, the late John Shoes Moshweo, the crowds all chanted their names whenever they touched the ball. So it was a kind of tradition among South African fans. So it didn't surprise me, but it was a nice feather in my cap that the crowd chose me and were quite fond of me.
Talking of you explaining to foreign journalists, I think also the British media outlets dubbed you the White Knight because you are the only white player in the South African national team during your time. How did you cope up with the national team, owing to the fact that you were the only white in the South African national team by then?
Yeah, I was the only white player in that particular year. In South Africa, we've actually our football has always been quite representative demographically.
Yeah.
But it just so happened that in 2009, 2010, I happened to be the only white player. But to be honest with you, in my industry, in the football industry here in South Africa, we don't put a large emphasis on color.
Yeah.
The football industry has been very progressive. Even during the apartheid days, it's been one of the industries that has tried to break down barriers and being quite progressive. So it left a little bit of a bad taste in my mouth that the foreign press were putting a large emphasis on color.
Yeah.
But I understood why that was.
But also, just a summary of your career. You started playing football at the age of 5, I think. That was 1982. Played an under-19 tournament where you were spotted by Coach Richard Gomez. And maybe just a brief history of how you rose in your career.
Yeah, so like I mentioned in the introduction, I'd been playing amateur football from when I was 5 until 17 for one club in Cape Town. And there was a very prestigious youth tournament in Cape Town that was held every year. It was called the Bay Hill Tournament. And it was very sought after. A lot of the teams wanted to play in this tournament. And eventually it became so big that international teams would come and join the tournament and take part in the tournament. So in 1994, I played in it and got spotted by the then Cape Town Spurs coach, Mish de Abre. And that's how they convinced me to come and join Cape Town Spurs. I was in my last year of school, so it was quite a difficult decision to make because it entailed lots of traveling every day to training. And so I had to convince my parents to let me sign as a professional. But it was a good decision because I managed both. And I played 2 years for Cape Town Spurs in their junior ranks. And then in 1996, got the chance to make my debut in the Premier Soccer League.
But also you were considered one of the most important players when meeting opponents with the tall players. Do you think also your height contributed to this? Was it an advantage to your career as well?
Yeah, it's the beauty of football is that you can be small, short, fat, thin, male, female, anyone can play it. And so being tall, a tall centre back certainly helped when it came to defending set pieces and attacking set pieces. But it was also a disadvantage because I hated coming up against shorter, low center of gravity players, strikers who could use both left and right feet. And I had to really be on my toes and adjust my game to be able to combat a speedy striker. And so my anticipation, I had to work on my anticipation. My reading of the game was very important to combat that. So it does have its advantages and disadvantages.
Yeah. But also, I think last year you wrote a letter to the SAFA, and also later, I think you did not get a reply from the federation. Later wrote it to the Ministry of Sports about the post-playing career of footballers, the current footballers and ex-footballers, which you said lead to depression, poverty, and substance abuse. Why did you decide to write this letter? about regarding the career of the footballers?
Yeah, because Yvonne, a lot of my colleagues, my ex-colleagues, have hit on hard times since retirement. The statistics are quite serious. Both, not only here in South Africa, but also in Europe, the statistics show us that 75% of ex-footballers 5 years after retirement are going to be divorced, bankrupt, or drug or alcohol dependent, or a mixture of those. So it's a very serious situation, not only here in South Africa. And so during lockdown here in South Africa last year in March, myself, Brian Baloy, who's an ex-Kaizer Chiefs and ex-Mamelodi Sundowns Bafana Bafana player, and Stanton Fredericks, also ex-Kaizer Chiefs and Bafana Bafana, decided to start an organization called the South African Football Legends. And we're building a platform to try and offer ex-players an opportunity to become educated, whether it's coaching licenses or administration roles, to get them back into the game, because a lot of our ex-professionals are not brought back into the game. They're almost thrown away once they are not players anymore. The club owners don't see any use for them anymore. And so that is very sad, because a lot of our players have 15 to 20 years experience, and they're not giving it back. They don't have an opportunity to give it back. So that's kept me very busy. We have a website which has got some fantastic content, and we are attempting to get sponsors on board and to drive activations and get ex-players back into the game.
I think also players should be taught on financial, they should be given more of a financial advice on how to manage finances.
Without a doubt, that's a very important point. But unfortunately, players have to realize that the clubs and the club owners and their agents are not going to do it. They're not going to do it. So we have to find a way of encouraging players to seek financial advice. You know, you don't have to be told what to do with your money, but at least seek advice, so that during your playing career, your mind is settled about your finances. You will become a better player if you have your finances in the right place. And as soon as you sign your very first contract as a professional player, you have to start saving. You have to start saving for that time when you do retire. And I know that for a lot of professional players, there are pressures from outside to spend money, your extended families, for example. I understand that, but that means that you have to start saving even sooner. And not a lot of players understand this. They get caught up in this whole status of being a professional footballer, wanting to buy fancy cars, spending money on many girlfriends, etc., etc. And we have to try and change this attitude, because post-retirement, I'm afraid the statistics are not for us.
Talking of footballers venturing in other activities, I think you own junior coaching clinics at multiple public schools. Why did you decide to venture in this? And also, maybe is it part of the BOOTH Foundation?
Yeah, so it's not a business. It's purely a non-profit organization, which myself and my wife started in 2009. Half of it is our book clubs, encouraging children to read. We're a family. We have 2 young boys, both myself and my wife. We love reading. And then the other half of it is football clinics, coaching clinics. So I get ex-players to come and host coaching clinics all around Gauteng here in South Africa, but we also do some work around the country as well, in different parts of the country. So that's part of my give back. It's important for ex-players to not only have a positive legacy, but also to provide some sort of a give back. So that's our give back, the BOOTH Education and Sports Trust. And yeah, that and the South African football legends are two projects which are very close to my heart, and hopefully we can go from strength to strength in that regard.
Great. Now, just as we wind up, Matthew, I think when I put the poster up that I will be hosting you today, a lot of fans shared the poster. Among them were my Zambian friends, and they are looking up to this interview. So maybe just a word of advice, because most people are looking up to you as well. So maybe what advice would you give to your fans, and maybe also the players, and maybe just talk about that financial crisis a bit to them, and maybe just your last words.
Yeah, well, to the fans, you know, it's always amazes me. A couple of years ago, I went to Dar es Salaam in Tanzania, and we did an activation there for a South African company, and you know, so many people still recognize me and wanted to talk to me about South African football.
Yeah.
And sometimes when we are in a cocoon, or we live in, or we don't get to travel as much as we used to, we forget what sort of influence footballers have, and how many people have gotten to watch you and to admire you and to criticize you and to enjoy the way you play. And so to my football, or anyone wanting to become a professional footballer, or any professional footballer now, my advice would be to give fans some time, whether you meet them on the street or at the stadium or wherever. This sense of arrogance has to stop, you know, because ultimately the fan is the one that directly and indirectly contributes to your wages, contributes to your salary, contributes to the growth of the game. So give some time to that fan. That's very important. And the message to the fans in our current situation, I just want to encourage them to continue to remain disciplined and patient, because we all want to go back to the stadiums. And just please stay safe, because we want to see you all back at the stadiums supporting your favorite team.
Thank you very much, Matthew. It was a pleasure hosting you, taking you back to your starting days in football and bringing us up to what you are currently up to now. To our viewers, please don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel at Safari Soccer Show. Follow us on all our social media handles at Safari Soccer Show on Instagram, Twitter at Safari Soccer Show, and on Facebook at Soccer Safari. Thank you, Matthew, and you're doing a good job. I wish you all the best.
Pleasure, Yvonne. Always a pleasure, and we are patiently waiting for you here in South Africa.
I will soon, around December.
Great.
Bye.